A single sentence, when spoken from the place of truth, can silence the storm and unmask the shadows like a sword of light through a web of illusion. It exposes what manipulation worked so hard to conceal. Have you ever wondered why certain people fear being truly seen? There is a reason some tremble not at accusation, but at quiet recognition. When God grants clarity, it becomes a shield no narcissist can penetrate. The enemy of the soul thrives on confusion and distortion. Narcissist abuse, emotional control, and spiritual manipulation often masquerade as love brilliance or even divine favor. But God is not the author of confusion. And when you say, I see who you really are, you're not just speaking to a person, you are declaring war against the spirit of deception. In that moment, something spiritual happens, the illusion begins to die. Scripture tells us the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. John 1:5. And as wisely noted, the power of evil is often not in force, but in falsehood. This message is not about vengeance, it's about vision. So let me ask you, what happens when you stop playing the role they assigned and start living the truth God revealed. Stay with me. There is more light ahead than you may have imagined. There are words that don't raise voices yet shake foundations. I see who you really are is one such phrase, spoken with calm clarity. It exposes not just behavior, but identity, the illusion the narcissist has so carefully crafted. Like a candle suddenly lit in a dark room, it reveals every corner they work to keep hidden, and in that light, control begins to crumble. This simple sentence strips the narcissist of their most powerful weapon, perception control. For so long, they depended on distortion, gaslighting, and emotional confusion to manipulate. But recognition is a sword clean shop, and precise. It declares, I am no longer deceived. And nothing terrifies the narcissist more than a truth they can no longer distort. Scripture teaches nothing is hidden that will not be made manifest, nor is anything secret that will not be known and come to light. Luke 8:17. When the super empath speaks this phrase, it's not accusation, it's revelation. It signals the end of narrative control. The role of victim or genius they performed so convincingly now falls apart under the weight of exposure. For the empath, this moment isn't about confrontation, it's about clarity. They've spent seasons walking through emotional fog, questioning their sanity, their worth, their memory. But when this phrase is added, it is not just heard, it is felt. It is the return of emotional autonomy after being lost in layers of guilt and manipulation. C.S. Lewis once observed that courage is not simply one of the virtues, but the form of every virtue at the testing point. Speaking this truth takes courage. It doesn't come from anger, it comes from resolve, a soul no longer willing to be shaped by illusion. And when the mask falls, the narcissist meets their greatest fear, exposure without control. Have you ever seen someone freeze, not from fear, but from being known? That's what happens when their tactics are recognized. The narcissist thrives on secrecy, on confusion, on the victor emerald. But when they are seen clearly, they are stripped of power not by force, but by the refusal to believe their lies any longer. This is where spiritual justice begins, not with vengeance, but with revelation. The narcissist cannot manipulate a person who no longer doubts themselves. They cannot twist reality for someone who sees the pattern. And once the truth is spoken, even quietly, it echoes louder than any scream. The power of this phrase lies in its simplicity. It doesn't argue, it doesn't beg, it doesn't accuse, it merely sees. and to see clearly is to begin to walk freely. What once held the empath hostage now stands revealed, fragile, exposed, and losing ground. And so the narcissist senses something has shifted. Their usual tactics, guilt, charm, anger, fail to land. There's no fuel left, no reaction, just clarity. And in that clarity, the illusion breaks. What remains is something new, a quiet, immovable refusal. There is a quiet kind of power that doesn't shout but sees. When you begin to understand the narcissist, not just their actions, but their patterns, you dismantle their grip. Recognition dissolves confusion. Deception, once clouded by charm or fear, sharpens, and in that clarity, the spell breaks. They cannot control what you now comprehend. The narcissist fears confrontation far less than they fear understanding. Confrontation feeds them, it keeps you emotionally engaged, but understanding that terrifies them because understanding is disengagement. It means the mask is no longer convincing. Their tactics, guilt, anger, social isolation, gaslighting, are now transparent. And why? What is seen clearly loses its hold. Proverbs 4:7 says, "Wisdom is the principal thing, therefore get wisdom, and with all thy getting, get understanding." The moment you stop needing validation from the narcissist, you start reclaiming emotional control. You begin to see that charm as a tactic, that tears as tools, their rage as performance, and suddenly their power fades. C.S. Lewis wrote that evil is not creative, it only corrupts what already exists. Likewise, the narcissist builds nothing real. They hijack perception that power depends on illusion, not truth. Once you see through it, they have nothing left but desperation, and desperation, once visible, cannot command respect. Have you noticed how silent they become when you stop reacting, how their energy shifts when your eyes say, "I understand that silence is not peace, it is fear, not yours." But theirs, because you are no longer part of their script. You are no longer supplying emotional fuel for their narrative. And they know it. Understanding is not bitterness, it is light. It is the holy refusal to be fooled again. It sees through the cycle, charm, guilt, manipulation, control, and it knows this is not love, this is depend. Didn't see masquerading as devotion, you begin to see not just what they do, but why they do it. And that is the beginning of spiritual clarity. Understanding leads to freedom. You don't need to explain yourself anymore. You don't need them to agree with your truth. You simply live in it. And the more you do, the more they shrink. Their psychological power dissolves not in argument, but in your refusal to play the part they assigned you. Freedom is not loud. It looks like peace. It sounds like silence. It feels like no longer waiting for them to change. You no longer seek confrontation because you no longer seek recognition. You see the pattern, and that is enough to let go, enough to step back, and enough to stop believing. So while they may still try the same tactics, you are no longer moved. Their charm no longer flatters, their guilt no longer bites, their anger no longer traps. You are not the same. You've seen too much, understood too much, and what you've seen you cannot unsee. Some towers don't fall by force, they vanish when you stop believing they're real. The narcissist power is not rooted in strength, but in perception. They do not dominate by truth, but a carefully curated illusion. They want to be seen as the misunderstood hero, the suffering victim, or the exceptional mind. These are not identities, they are costumes, and they only work if you agree to see them that way. Your perception is the fuel, your empathy, your hope, your willingness to give the benefit of the doubt. These are the pillars that hold their image upright. When you stop believing the narrative, when you stop giving them that role, their influence collapses like a set without an audience. In John 8:44, Jesus describes the devil as a liar. and the father of lies. So it is with the narcissist, their domain is deception, but truth exposes, and perception anchored in truth no longer dances with fiction. You begin to see not a genius, but a controller, not a wounded soul, but a master of narrative manipulation. C.S. Lewis wisely noted that pride is spiritual cancer. It eats up the very possibility of love or contentment. The narcissist thrives on this hidden pride, masking it with fragility or brilliance. But your recognition interrupts the story. When you no longer reflect the version they want to see, their pride loses its grip. Have you ever looked at someone and realized they are not who you thought they were? That revelation is not betrayal, it is liberation. It's the moment your spirit aligns with truth. The illusion breaks not by confrontation, but by quiet refusal. You no longer play the part, you no longer validate the lie, and without your perception, the character disappears. Their power depends on how you see them. They feed off roles: mentor, savior, victim. But once you see the pattern, the power ends, not because they change, but because you did, you grew, you learned. You stop needing their approval to trust your own judgment, and in doing so, you reclaim your vision. This shift is spiritual. What was once fog becomes clarity. What once felt like love now feels like control. What once drew you in now makes you step back. You see the pattern, and the pattern no longer surprises you. It's not your responsibility to fix the illusion, it's your right to stop believing it. They may call you cold, they may say you changed, but what really changed was your perception. You saw the mask, and you no longer pretended it was a face. That quiet awakening becomes your strength. The story they told no longer writes your reality, and even as they scramble to repair the image, your silence becomes the loudest answer. You don't need to accuse, you don't need to defend, you simply refuse. Refuse to believe, refuse to participate, refuse to let perception be shaped by deception. There is no thunder, no scene, just stillness. When the super empath reaches true indifference, the narcissist faces their final defeat, not because the empath fought harder, but because they stopped playing. Indifference is not hate, it is healing. It is the calm that follows the storm. Once you've seen the pattern, broken the illusion, and chosen peace over performance, the narcissist thrives on emotion: fear, guilt, anger, even love distorted into submission. Every reaction is emotional fuel, but when your soul grows quiet, when you respond with nothing, that power starves. Your silence becomes a wall they cannot scale. Indifference is not apathy, it's clarity, and clarity cannot be manipulated. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Romans 12:21. Indifference in this light is a form of spiritual goodness. It refuses to return evil with emotional chaos. It does not fight with the same weapons, it simply removed itself from the battlefield. The narcissist remains, but you are no longer available. C.S. Lewis once remarked that you don't truly know how bad you are until you try to be good. Likewise, the narcissist doesn't realize how dependent they are until you stop reacting. Their control was never about strength, it was about your willingness to respond. Indifference breaks the chain without breaking your spirit. Have you ever watched a flame die because there was nothing left to consume? That's what your silence becomes. They will try the usual tactics: guilt, charm, confrontation. But you remain unmoved. This quiet disengagement disorient them. It reveals that their perceived control was built on your emotional involvement. You no longer need to prove, to explain, to defend. You are not cold, you are free. And that freedom unnerved the narcissist more than any confrontation ever could because they can't fix it. They can't win it back. The game has ended, and you left the arena without a sound. Indifference is not absence of feeling, is the presence of resolve. It means your energy no longer bends toward confusion. You no longer seek recognition or revenge. You simply no longer need anything from them. That absence becomes a mirror, and what they see in it they cannot bear. The narcissist may try harder shift tactics, intensify control, but nothing lands. Your peace has become impenetrable, and that more than anger or confrontation reveals that helplessness, what was once a cycle, now becomes a closed door. No drama, no echo, just quiet refusal. They sense it, and in their world, indifference is rejection, and its purest form, not because you punished them, but because you simply walked away inside yourself. You no longer carry them in your thoughts. You no longer seek closure. You are living in freedom. And as the narcissist scrambles to rewrite the narrative to reassert control, they find only silence. Not passive silence, but sacred stillness. And in that stillness, the walls of their illusion begin to fall. A collapse in their control is not the end for the narcissist, it is a call to action. When the empath disengages, the narcissist responds with urgency, not remorse. Their goal is not healing, is recapture. They will shift tactics like a seasoned actor changes masks. Rage becomes sorrow, cruelty becomes charm. It is not love, it is strategy. The attempt to win you back is never about your heart, it's about regaining control. You've seen through their performance, and that exposure threatens the entire structure they built, so they push harder, they twist the narrative, they become the victim, the misunderstood. But the purpose is the same: to pull you back into the illusion. Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. Matthew 7:15. The narcissist wears whatever form suits the moment, sometimes a cry for help, sometimes a public act of contrition. But underneath is the same tactic: narrative control, and the moment you react, the cycle begins again. C.S. Lewis once reflected that the greatest evil is not done in sordid dens of crime, but in clean carpeted offices by quiet men with white collars. Evil is rarely dramatic, it's calculated. The narcissist doesn't scream to regain control. They perform, they isolate, they subtly shift blame. The aim is quiet dominance, not explosive conflict. Have you ever felt like the one who caused the damage is suddenly the one asking for comfort? That role reversal is no accident, it's part of the manipulation. The narcissist will cry, they'll confess just enough to sound sincere, but never enough to change. What they want is your guilt, your doubt, your return. They'll remind you of better moments, of a sudden kindness promise, a new beginning, but beneath the words is a pattern, one that only you can choose to recognize. And when you do, your stillness becomes your shield, not coldness, wisdom, not silence, strength. You know now validation is not the same as truth. You own no explanations. Your healing does not require their understanding. When they try to rewrite the story, you don't need to correct them. You've already left the script. You are not obligated to soothe their discomfort. You're not their emotional caretaker. You are your own soul's protector. This is not cruelty, it's Clara. City, your refusal to be drawn in is not vengeance, it is victory. Each time you don't answer, each time you don't explain, you reaffirm your freedom. The narcissist senses it, even if they won't name it, and that awareness shakes them. Their world is unraveling, not because you attacked, but because you withdrew quietly, firmly. Your absence speaks your peace conference, and in that space they will throw every tactic they know, but your refusal is steady, you're bound. Jerry immovable, and so in desperation they escalate or retreat. But either way, something has shifted forever. You no longer need to win the game because you're no longer playing. Freedom doesn't always feel like victory. At first, it often feels like grief. But true freedom begins the moment you see clearly and refuse to look away. The narcissist hope to keep you in a loop: confusion, guilt, emotional abuse, and false identity. But when your eyes open to the pattern and your heart stops negotiating with illusion, something sacred happens: liberation. You stop asking, will they change? And begin asking, why did I stay? That shift is not bitterness, it's awakening. It's the moment you understand that change was never the promise they were, and once the promise is exposed as manipulation, you no longer wait for redemption from someone who cannot give what they never had. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. John 8:32. Not truth shouted at you, but truth you discover yourself. Once you see the narcissist tactics: gaslighting, charm, guilt, narrative control, you can't unsee them. And from that moment on, they begin to lose the power they held for so long. C.S. Lewis noted that we are not bodies with souls, we are souls with bodies. And your soul was never meant to be tethered to someone else's distortion. It was meant to walk freely in light, in dignity, in truth. Clarity is the first step toward that freedom. It may come slowly, but once it arrives, it cannot be undone. Have you ever realized that peace came not from fixing someone, but from finally walking away? That peace is a sign that your spirit has returned home. You no longer seek confrontation. You no longer seek to be believed. You've seen enough, and seeing is what frees you. The narcissist hold weakens not because they've changed, but because you have. You no longer need to be validated. You no longer seek their apology. You understand that some people do not transform, they adapt to survive, and you refuse to be part of that adaptation. There is no need for revenge, no need to expose them. The truth itself does the work. Your quiet refusal is their undoing. Your lack of engagement becomes their reflection. They are left with their own echo, and that is justice deeper than any confrontation could provide. You step out of the cycle not with a scream, but with resolve. The person they tried to control no longer exists. What stands now is someone healed, whole, and untouchable. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. You saw clearly, and that was enough. And as you walk forward, you don't carry the weight of who they were, you carry the strength of who you've become. Clarity is not a weapon, it is a light. And in that light, you see the road ahead, no longer waiting, no longer circling, just walking free. Because true freedom isn't found in changing them, it's found in never needing them to change. There is a quiet strength in no longer needing to be believed, in no longer explaining yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you. When the mask falls and the truth stands, you don't need to fight, you only need to remain. God does not call us to endure manipulation in the name of peace. He calls us to walk in light, even if that means walking away. Perhaps you've seen yourself in these patterns, questioning your worth, trying to earn clarity, and replace built on confusion. But now you understand your vision was never the problem. Your empathy was not weakness, it was misplaced trust. And the moment you reclaim your voice, your silence becomes powerful, not because you've said more, but because you've stopped participating in the lie. So I invite you, share this message if it spoke to your soul. Subscribe for more truth rooted in grace. And if your spirit agrees, write this in the comments: I walk in truth. I am no longer available to illusion. Let your words be a witness. You are not alone. You are rising with wisdom, with peace. and with the full authority of your God given